Hello YouTube, I am War Master Zan and this is Wars of Warcraft, a YouTube series I am creating based loosely on the concept of the Deadliest Warrior TV series. I'll be rating factions based on their leadership and legitimacy, troop variety and quality, and overall battle tactics. A lot of this will focus on the leadership however, as the best equipped troops aren't much use if led poorly. Then, when I have enough information, I will evaluate their quality as a military force, and in the future construct a scenario to set two factions head to head to see who emerges victorious. Now, with that out of the way, let's move on to our first faction of the series, the Syndicate. At the Syndicate's height, it was based in Strombrad and operated within the Hillsbrad foothills, the Arathi Highlands, and their former homes in the Ultarak Mountains. They were spawned after the Second War, during which the Horde attempted to sway various Alliance nobles to their side. Thinking the Alliance was on the verge of losing the war, the ruler of Ultarak, Aiden Perinold, struck a bargain with the Horde. However, after the Alliance were victorious, Aiden's plotting was uncovered, and he and his men were ousted. Then, finding that even the last free orcs remaining would no longer take them in, the noblemen began resorting to thievery and banditry, calling themselves the Syndicate. Over time, the organization was bolstered by criminals looking for a more stable employer. Despite its loose association and ego-riddled command, it was an attractive prospect to the common thug. After a failed attempt to recapture their homelands, Aiden Perinold was captured and left to die in prison. In his absence, his son Aladin Perinold took control of the Syndicate. And that's where we'll be taking our snapshot. This was a brief overview. There is much more to be said about the history and founding of the Syndicate. Would you like to know more? For more of the Syndicate and Ultarak's history in general, I strongly suggest you watch these videos by Tyranor. First category: leadership and legitimacy. Leaders and their backgrounds. Aladin Perinold, heir to the Kingdom of Ultarak. Succeeding his father, Aiden Perinold, after his recapture, charismatic and ambitious, Aladin took command of the Syndicate and immediately set his eyes on reclaiming the city of Ultarak. Like his father, Aladin is cautious at all times and painfully aware of the dangers that come from within his own faction, or even his own family, surrounding himself with the necessary protection from untimely death, just like his father before him. Lore-wise, he is speculated to be dead, due to the questline involving killing him for the retrieval of a keepsake. For the sake of this overview, we will be treating him as alive, as he has the most ties to the faction's most relevant history, as well as being seen in-game. Lady Beve Perinold, sister of Aladin, mage. Lady Beve Perinold, sister of Lord Aladin, was sent to study at the city of Lordaeron as a young lady, but found herself returning to live with her family as they found themselves in exile after the end of the Second War. She lent her skills in magic to her family and their faction, being the best among the small number of mages within the Syndicate. She knew that one day she would inherit control over them. Though she was loyal to her family, she sought to overthrow her father at any opportunity she could, but found him warier than she could manage, the Lord surrounding himself with bodyguards at all times. Biding her time, she continued her magical studies, and kept an eye on her father's defences until he was eventually recaptured. At that time, Aladin, her brother, took command of the Syndicate instead. Lord Falconcrest, lesser noble, leader of the Stromguard Syndicate. One of the many lesser nobles under Lord Aiden Perinold, he had no love or loyalty for the man, but on occasion found himself in agreement with him. The idea of siding with the Horde was one of those agreements. However, after the loss of their holdings and their exile, Lord Falconcrest felt the blame lay squarely at the feet of Lord Aiden Perinold, as Falconcrest felt he could have secured a lesser sentence. Despite these troubles, he did admit that the plan to take Lordaeron lands went a lot better than anticipated, and took the opportunity to lead the Syndicate's faction within Stromguard in the Arathi Highlands. There, he sowed his own ideals among the faction, and sought to overthrow Aiden's own to the north, though he had to bide his time while his forces grew. On Aladin's succession of his father, Falconcrest turned his sights to overthrowing the heir, seeing him as no different from his father before him. Category 2. Leadership styles. Lord Aladin Perinold, the charismatic heir of Ultarak. Not much can be said of Lord Aladdin's leadership style beyond his supposed charisma and ambitious personality. His desire to reclaim his lost city should of course resonate with the members of the Syndicate under him with more delusions of nobility, and with him at the helm, they could secure a higher morale. Ability to command, 7 out of 10. Ability to command will dictate how well troops coordinate underneath him. He has successfully held what remains of the Syndicate together despite their fractured nature and warring egos, where a lesser man would have likely been overthrown already. Legitimacy and morale. How likely the troops are to flee under duress, 6 out of 10. Though he undoubtedly has the most legitimacy to command the Syndicate, he is still a member of it, and the Syndicate itself has trouble coordinating with each other to begin with. Only among a handful of former nobles who held lands with his father could he possibly present a noble visage. Special additions? None. Lady Beve Perinold, the cautious and plotting mage. From what information there is available on Lady Perinold, we can see that she is a woman willing to bide her time and look for weakness, not risking an attack where she was uncertain of the circumstances. As a capable mage, under Lady Perinold's leadership, the Syndicate could see an uptick in the number of mages in their ranks, though the overall quality of their magic could be called into question due to a lack of formal magic education. Ability to command, 5 out of 10. We have not seen any level of command taken by Lady Perinold, though from her demeanour and actions in study and plot, we can assume she is at least intellectually capable and cunning. Legitimacy and morale, 4 out of 10, assuming Aladdin is alive, 5 out of 10 if he is dead. Similar to Aladdin Perinold, her namesake alone gives her only a minor advantage within the Syndicate, possibly allowing her to take the reins if Aladdin did indeed perish. Special additions, better mages. Under Beve's tutelage, we can assume that the mages she controls would be of a higher quality than those under any of the other possible leaders. Alternatively, she could take command of the mages entirely, commanding them while Falconcrest and Aladdin command the fighters and rogues. Lord Falconcrest, disgruntled noble. Lord Falconcrest is a wild card in a battle situation involving the entire Syndicate. With no loyalty to Aladdin and essentially his own splinter faction under him, it would not be an unlikely proposal for Falconcrest to try and find an opportunity to remove Aladdin in the confusion of battle. Despite this, he is a capable leader in his own right, considering his control over the splinter faction, making him valuable in situations which could call for maneuvers requiring the forces to be split up. Ability to command, 6 out of 10. Holding command over the faction of the Syndicate within Stromgarde means that Falconcrest at least has some concept of what it means to lead. Silently plotting a schism means that he is at least able to keep his men from spilling the secret. Legitimacy, 3 out of 10. Though he is able to control his men adequately, as well as lead them in the command of his specific domain, this does not give him any real credibility to command the Syndicate as a whole, not to mention he has no ties to the original heir line. Special additions, untrustworthy. A flat-out negative and a massive black spot on his ability to lead is that he was actively plotting to overthrow Aladdin Perinold. If the two were ever on the field of battle together, there is no guarantee that he wouldn't simply take the advantage of confusion and end the heir of Alterac. Troop variety and quality. For this faction, I will be taking account of all Syndicate members in-game and using the information to create a chart to indicate the distribution of the faction in terms of their unit quality and variety. I may use this method in the future for their factions, with less readily available information about the composition of their ranks. Syndicate composition. From a sample of 156 in-game NPCs, we have 28 spellcasters, 68 fighters, and 60 rogues. For spellcasters we have wizards, conjurers, and mages. Fighters we have highwaymen and mercenaries, and rogues we have pathstalkers, spies, and prowlers. As is written in the lore, the Syndicate are mainly built up of fighters and rogues, with their spellcasters only making up just a small fraction of their forces. The quality of the spellcasters are stated to not be very high, though it is notable that they do contain at least some casters who could be considered to be more competent mages and wizards, for example. In a combat scenario, a few of these mages could be very useful in the support of an offensive role, if not very useful on their own. As for the fighters, they are your typical bandit fare, armoured in leather gear and usually armed with dual daggers or swords. They would likely make for good ambushes, however, as their background as bandits would give each of them some experience in the practice, as well as instilling in them the ruthlessness required to efficiently pull off such surprise attacks. However, one thing to note is that approximately half of the Syndicate's rogues are spies. Keeping in theme with them being responsible for assassinations and destabilization, it would not be out of the realm of possibility for them to use their spies for reconnaissance and sabotage on enemy forces, cutting supply lines or assassinating high-profile targets. Tactics: guerrilla warfare, assassination, and stealth. In keeping with their reputation as a destabilizing force, with their employment of various spies and rogues, the Syndicate is likely to employ hit-and-run tactics with their hardier troops, such as mercenaries and highwaymen, supported by various spellcasters assaulting the target, while rogues seek out higher-value targets within the chaos before retreating. Due to their small number, the Syndicate will likely attempt to whittle down their opponent with strike after strike, only attempting an all-out assault when they know they can win. Against a force of bandits, they may even convince some of them to join them instead, bolstering their number. Conclusion: overall, the Syndicate is a loose confederation of lesser nobles vying for control of small holdings throughout their former homeland, and lack many hardened frontline fighters, preferring instead ambush tactics. Against most larger organized forces, they would not last very long if cornered. However, their loose formation does allow them to be destroyed in one area, while being largely unaffected everywhere else. With the correct application of assassination and sabotage, the Syndicate could prove a formidable foe for someone unprepared for this style of combat. Thank you for watching. What factions would you like to see covered in the future? With this series, I'm hoping to cover a lot of the lesser factions, as I find them a lot more interesting than the main ones, although I will throw in a few here and there. The next video will be covering the Defias Brotherhood. Thanks again, and I'll see you later.